Space Station 3 got up and running last time, along with some space science and a bunch of other things. And of course, I managed to miss a very special button last time. Hello, everybody. This is Frogman. Welcome back to Captain of Industry. Yes, as I was messing around doing and watching the watching the video back, I realized that there was another button here that I completely missed, and we'll have to start thinking about using that as we decide to figure out how many of these particular labs we want to continue to play with. Yeah, if you want to run more labs, you just click that button, you send another 120 of these station parts up there. You will run a few more people, and we will get more bonuses in the process. So I am actually kind of interested in doing this, and we will be looking into probably doing this several times, if for no other reason than the additional Unity plus, this is a forever Unity as long as we can keep this thing crewed. And, well, the additional 25% bonus on top of the, if research efficiency. That's going to eventually accumulate quite a bit. And again, all we got to do after a while is just provide the crew and the food to keep these people happy. So this is an interesting thing. We'll work on this as we go, and again, we probably will. I need to start looking at a lot of different things as far as things go, but that's an interesting thing to be able to continue to do, at least for the bonuses that you're going to get on top of everything else. If for nothing else, that's it's expensive to send a rocket up occasionally and, give some people some food and occasionally have to change some people out. But, as the game gets older and longer and the way things go, you're going to have plenty of research points and plenty of resources to play with. Plus, we, again, still haven't even screwed with the offices. I keep saying we should do it, but, well, I keep finding a reason and an excuse not to. Anyhow, today, what we are going to do is we're going to complete the fast breeder reactor research, which I paused and saved the game just at about the point in time when it's going to be done. So we should be, it actually didn't go that long, if I recall correctly. It was maybe an hour. It really wasn't all that bad. I just kind of sat around and did a few things at 125 research per minute. That's not terrible. It could have been a little better, but again, we're almost done. We're going to turn this thing on and let it do. Now, I believe in between episodes there were a few little things that we did have to take care of. And I'm going to have to continue to babysit them. I almost lost, and I don't know if you guys got to see that last time around or not. I almost lost this, and I think this is the first thing I need to go look at, because we ran it a little while and things got to be a little silly. I need to cut that line off so they stop trying to dig out from underneath of our rail lines, and I may end up having to actually very soon probably start filling that hole back in so that we don't lose this line. I don't feel like moving them. I don't feel like doing any of that kind of stuff, so we'll just have to see how that all goes. But that's going to be something I'll have to worry about. And there was a couple of other little things, nothing major, but we'll get there. We are slowly working on filling in the hole back here with the current rocks and whatnot. I'm going to build a line down into this area just so that we have a kind of a shortcut across here for the time being. There will be another shortcut cut through here eventually. And fairly soon, once these guys right here get this hole dug out, or whomever finishes first, because we're just going to level the top side of this mountain out pretty much, and then we're going to start chewing into this because, we're consuming massive amounts of sand doing all of the research that we're doing, and it's time to start really starting to think about it. So I do need to tell you fellas that we're almost down. I think they're almost down, right? We should be about good. All right, dumping designation. You guys are going to be allowed to dump and fill that hole all the way in, all the way to wherever that's going to be nice and level and flat. I may end up doing like the line for here. I know we're kind of jibber jabbering for a second here. I may end up just building a flat surface back here, or we may end up doing a bunch more work, but I do want to fill this hole in because this hole is a usable surface for building at this point because it's flat, and we got the majority of the copper. There's not much in this hole, and I got tired of digging for it. So all right, on to the rest of the thing. Go ahead, unpause the game, let it finish this deal here so that we can get our efficiencies back up and do a couple of things, and we can start talking about the pain that is going to be, well, this new research, this new technology. All right, well, let's That was a nice, decent, easy thing. And we're going to send a couple of rockets out, and away we go. All right, since we're not going to be doing research, I'm going to go ahead again and drag these two down like I have been doing. I don't know why I keep touching this one. We're not making consumer electronics. And you guys can go all the way down. You get back up to there. You get back up to there. And I think we can do that one for the moment. Sure. And I might even... Well, yeah, that's the one I want for now. We'll just see where that puts us, and then we can go from there. So... fast breeder reactors and all of the things that we are going to get with that particular research. That is going to give us the ability to create 2 new fuels out of the current stuff that we have at this point. Actually, I think it's 3 new things as far as this goes. So we're going to need to be able to process and build core fuel, blanket fuel, and we're going to be able to finally take this spent MOX that we've got, or the accumulated spent MOX that we've got, and we're going to be able to convert that into blanket fuel. We're also going to be able to take all of the spent fuel that we're currently making and turn it directly into blanket fuel too. So this little, the number thingy that we're doing over where? This one right here, where it's going to take 8 spent fuel, turn that into 1 plutonium, and then that's going to be turned into the MOX fuel that's sitting right here. So the first thing I want to do while we're sitting here thinking about this is we have to understand the new process. The new process is we're going to, I'm probably just going to build a very simple system for now, because our core goal is that we have to get into the production of making a decent amount of core fuel in order to be able to run a nuclear reactor or the breeder reactor at full power, or any kind of power for that matter. So let's grab out a nuke reactor or a breeder reactor, plop one down, and we're just going to take a look at the numbers in here. So again, it's a similar system as what we have been playing with in the past. It will be able to produce the same amount of steam that both of these 2 reactors currently can produce. So I believe it'll make 384 or more. I forget exactly how this whole thing goes. The issue with the fast breeder reactor is it outputs steam super. So we're going to have to introduce the new, where are they? Power, general power. We're going to be introducing steam super pressure turbines. So the first thing we're going to do, at least at this point in time, and I'm just going to kind of slap some of this stuff down. Likely we are going to be building the next set of reactors in here. We're going to start with one of these for the time being, because of the fact that I know that we're going to have to do a complete retrofit of the system here once we get all this MOX and whatnot, for the spent MOX, processing into what we need it to process. So the idea, first off, I guess, is we're going to talk about the fact that this is going to produce a massive amount of power. So if we look at what it's going to say, just by itself, it's going to be able to produce, where is the number? 240 megawatts of electricity. Well, that's what we're theoretically, if I were to come over here, and I don't think we need these guys anymore. You guys can get paused. I do need to do, if I'm going to continue to use these things, we're going to have to do something with it as far as a backup, but I am going to shut them off right now. It's just something that I've got to deal with. And honestly, I think what we're probably going to do is we're going to idle down this mess. We're going to idle down the base as much as possible. And I'm going to finally tear out all these parts and use them to build the power plant that this thing is going to, produce. So we're going to shut those down, and I'm going to put this on a kind of a low run schedule so that we can replenish all of our resources and calm down. So that way we can see. So this one technical reactor, if we can find all of the fuel that it needs to run, will run all of this type of power, meaning we can run all of that. The problem is that the system changes, and this is the first thing you need to grasp around your concept before you want to build any of the fuel reprocessing. So actually, the first thing I do want to do while I'm thinking about it is we want to leave this alone for right now, but I'm done. That is the last MOX plutonium that they're going to make. So as soon as this is done, I'm going to stop that. All right, pause. You are going to get paused as well, although I guess we can let it run for a little bit. The plutonium is fairly radioactive. It's not as radioactive, I think, as the MOX, spent MOX is. I don't know, I have to look. It's 3, spent MOX is what? 4. So yeah, I'd much rather just not produce any more MOX fuel at this point. So the first thing we are going to do is, this is going to happen. This has to happen because, well, the first thing, this is going to happen. This has to happen. I just need to stop turning it into MOX fuel because we are no longer going to be using MOX fuel at this point. We need the output of this to be something else, but we're going to sit here and talk about some numbers first before we get into this idea. I just wanted to make sure I shut that off so that we stop making the thing that we need into something that we don't need anymore. Anyhow, so the process here again is that this whole system, these 2 reactors right here, are capable of producing 240 megawatts, or 120 apiece, 240 megawatts together, which means theoretically this one reactor can take care of the entirety of all of this, except for the one problem. The one problem is this requires it's going to output steam super. So we have to prepare to use steam super. As you guys probably know and remember, we're only ever allowed to use 72 megawatts of total line shaft power on one of these particular systems. 72 megawatts. Well, that means, again, 72 megawatts is going to be the total end-all be-all here. So that means at max, we're only ever going to be able to run 4 of these machines. So you can kind of do your math backwards, you can kind of do your math forwards. It's pretty stinking simple because of the fact that the super turbines, wherever they are, super pressure turbines are going to be able to produce 18 megawatts of power. So if you look at your numbers, you got 18 megawatts of power for one of these. You have 12 megawatts of power in one of those, and 6 megawatts of power in one of those. The simple, easy all math is that it's going to take 2 of these, and 2 of these to run this. If I can manage to copy all of it. Control X, catch it all, and go. So if you look at all of that, this is going to be, I forget where the numbers are, 18 times 2, so 36 plus 12 plus 12 plus 6 plus 6. So 36 plus 36, okay? That's pretty much how that's going to work. There's your 72 megawatts. The thing is that we're going to be outputting the same old deal that we have been doing, which is 48 steams. So 384 divided by 48, again, is going to be 8 of them. So now instead of having, well, this, we'll have this 8 times this thing. So something kind of like, so that, just as for an example. And by 8, I mean I have 8 of the first super, excuse me a second, almost spilt my coffee, but yeah, anyhow, 8 of these. We're allowed to start with the fact that these super turbines are going to consume 384 steam. 8 of those will produce the system, which means the new power generational kind of an idea, and this is just, again, very simple, not trying to say that this is permanent, but that is an idea. So I'm going to get rid of those guys. Now, we are going to have to, and this is the worst part about this whole silliness, this is going to require, and this, I've already kind of fiddled with it and experimenting with it just to wrap my brain around how this is going to work. We're going to have to leave this running. We're going to have to leave this running, and I think what we're probably also going to have to do is convert a good portion of this water production system over to the other method, i.e. we're probably going to have to start feeding it. I don't know. I know that my biggest problem here, and I've been doing this for a while, and I know we've been using a considerable amount of power because of it. All of these right here, there's 32 of these that are consuming 400 kilowatts of power. So if we do 32 times 400, you're looking at 12 megawatts of power out of this entire system. And I understand that that's, not necessarily a whole lot of much. 12 megawatts of power to keep this thing running. Well, 12 megawatts out of that 240 megawatts is gone just to keep the water on when it's running at capacity. That's not counting how much this uses. That's not counting how much these use. I mean, every one of those things uses a considerable amount of power as well. So in the process, we're going to run this until we have a reasonable supply of the stuff that we need to keep this reactor running, and then we're going to gut it. And we're going to build another reactor over here. I don't know. I'm going to have a little bit of fun with this. I've had to kind of figure out how to make it work anyway. But yeah, essentially the system is going to be something along the lines of we're going to keep these guys running, and then we're going to feed their waste products, whatever, into this until we can self-sufficiently keep this thing running, and then we're going to gut the whole thing and start over, because we do not need all of this processing anymore once this thing runs. So just as a for instance, in a way to make this work, this is kind of generally what you're going to need to be able to make the thing work. Unfortunately, there is no room to do any of this over here somewhere. I'm going to have to probably I'm not saying that this is the absolute finite place or where this is going to be, but it is definitely going to be something along those lines. Can I don't just exit? Can we shove you clear up against the wall and maybe get enough room? For this. Barely. That's not amazing. Well, I don't know. We'll play with this. If nothing else, again, it's Steam. We could just put them this direction out here or whatever. But this is, generally speaking, we're probably going to try to stay reasonably close, understanding that there's going to be at least 2 more, maybe 3 more of the processing. So I'm going to grab that whole thing and get it out of the way, and we're going to put it over here for now. I just want you guys to understand that this is going to generally see what you're going to be as far as this is going to go. The next really pain problem, and I suppose we can probably put it out of the way completely, like right there, just so that we have our numbers. The next pain problem is the understanding that you have a problem immediately if you try to go to work with just this thing right off the bat. So core fuel, I guess we can step into the next problem and where we're going to try to go today. We're going to try to end today with being able to produce the fuels needed to keep the thing running. And we need to be able to do it in a reasonable process. So for the rest of the time, I understand we've kind of talked about that. For the rest of the time, we have to concentrate on building fuel for this thing. So you don't need the blanket fuel to run the reactor. The blanket fuel is just going to be something that you're going to be able to use to process into other things. Essentially what you're going to do is you're going to be taking your blanket fuel, which is more or less going to be a waste product from prior resources, reprocessed into something you can use that will be then turned into blanket fuel enriched. So we're not going to concentrate on that right now. What we are going to concentrate on is the production of as much core fuel as we possibly can. Just running this thing on 96, meaning the lowest setting, 96 in here. So if I were to, we're on pause right now, right? So if I grab this and I run it all the way down to here, it's going to be 96 steam. That's the lowest it can make as far as they all do, or everything goes like that. And yeah, that's just how that's going to work. So the thing here is we have to be able to be, I'm assuming at this point in time, looking at the numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 96 times 4 is going to be the max amount of numbers that we're going to be, or 4 times 4, which is 16 core fuel per minute to keep that thing running. I'm under the assumption on that point because these require 2. It might not, it might not. I have not run one of these things in 100 game years as far as this goes. As far as it's been last year since I built one of these systems to make it work, and they've changed the methodology of how things go. So the thing we're going to shoot for right now is we're going to shoot for the ability to try to load this up with as much stuff as possible. The enrichment or the blanket fuel does not count for the fuel in the reactor. It's going to be a byproduct that we're going to use the reactor to process into other things. In order to be able to get this thing to run, we need to be able to keep, at this point, we need to make 80 or 100 fuel before we turn it on, and then we need to be able to produce, at bare minimum, 4 core fuel per minute. So we're going to look at the core fuel process, which is going to be the reasoning why I shut the thing off, shut that processor, that chemical plant off. Right now, the only way we have to be able to make core fuel is via plutonium, salt, I guess that's just the simplest thing. That's the only way we can make it right now. That's it. Because we don't have a steady supply of enriched uranium-20, or we don't have a steady supply of core fuel spent. Well, that's an obvious thing. We know where that comes from. That comes from the processing of just running core fuel through the thing. The interesting thing about core fuel and spent core fuel and blanket fuel is that they're fluids. And this is the really bad thing about it, because the game doesn't like you to store or have a battery outside of their silly little salt thingy. You cannot store fluids such as that in one of these tanks. One of the beauties of whether or not you want to know what gets stored where, at least they're kind enough to tell us here, is that in that line, you don't see core fuel, you don't see spent core fuel, and you don't see blanket fuel, and you don't see enriched blanket fuel. But if you go over to the pipelines, wherever the pipes are, there they are right here. Now, if you look at the reactor in here, and we move this out of the way, we have 4 pipe connections on the front side here. So the biggest pain in the part problem here is the fact that you cannot store the fuel. You have to use it immediately, or as close to immediately as you can. Now, that's going to be the fun part and the way things go. So again, on to the thing where we were talking about here. The first thing we're going to do immediately is we're going to take every single ounce of plutonium that this particular machine is going to be making, and it's going to get turned into core fuel immediately. All right, so in order to do that, and I've got these sitting here, I think you're going to be doing this recipe now. Yes. The next step on top of that is that we're going to then, well, on top of that, we're going to be doing this process, but we're going to be worried about that in a minute. And I'm also getting ready to have to do a whole bunch of, I think they're going to do this in a year, so we probably going to get a bunch of stuff coming out of here. My major concern with this entire process is this is going to start to be a 1-for-1 swap based off of the fuel that's going to be coming out of these things. Until we get a lot of this MOX chewed up and eaten and have a steady supply of core fuel, we're going to be having a problem, because we're going to have to start thinking about storing a serious amount of fission product. But that's for here, neither here nor there, for later, however that all goes. The first thing we need to do, and I guess it is what it is, we need to stop, again, like I said, producing the MOX rods. We're not going to do that anymore because we don't want to be using MOX rods. Instead, what we want to be doing is we want to be moving towards, which one is it? This one? Not that one. Where is it? I need you. Okay, so we're going to uncheck you, and we're going to go to there. So salt and plutonium will turn into 4 core fuel. The thing is this is going to not be very fast, which sucks, and that's going to be the problem. We're not going to be able to do anything with that until we have a whole bunch of core fuel. We're going to need to be able to back up a bunch of this into a reactor to the point that, and I'm going to be fair with this, I don't even know if I'm going to try to run the initial reactor. Like, this might just live right here for a little while until we can build up enough core fuel that we can actually keep the stinking thing running. I might just vent the steam, because it's not going to be very fast, so to speak. Anyhow, on top of that, we're going to do this recipe, which means we need to modify a couple of things and go from there. You're going to be MOX into a fission product, which is going to immediately get dumped into this nightmare of a mess over here, which is fine. Anyhow, I need to retrofit a couple of things. I'm going to let these rods go out onto the bus, and we should have a little while before this runs again, so we'll get those dumped. I'm going to move this probably back here or over here someplace. I don't know yet exactly where I want it to go, but we need that all to get dismantled, got rid of, and gone away. And I need to make sure that we're not going to be too screwed at any point in time here. Now, we should be good. Everything's fine. Again, we have... well, that's the end of the MOX. We're not making any more of it. It's all going to be turned into core fuel, so we shouldn't need to be too concerned about it. And if I have to store things, I can store things over here. My main concern is that while we're diddling around doing this, every single time this runs now, it's going to make 2 of these. And as we start processing the spent MOX fuel into them, it's a 2 into 2, which is going to be a kind of a ouch for a little bit. But as we can see here, there's also a shared recipe where we have salt in here and salt in here. I think the next thing we need to do as far as setting recipes is that recipe so that we can also see the next step. So the fun thing is, again, once we get to running the reactor, we're going to be able to at least recoup a decent amount of our core fuel, as well as, you know, just kind of continuing things. So yeah, we're going to have a lot of fun to try to figure things out, and I'm going to basically move this chemical plant out of this hole. It's going to get, like, we're just going to move this and move these guys down so that we can pull the things out of here. I may end up just putting this right next to the reactor so that everything, I don't know, again, I haven't figured out how I want to do this. I probably should just get rid of, like, those and just get them out of the way, or maybe what I need to do is move a couple of things around. I don't know. I have not made up my mind how I want to do this just yet, but we're going to at least start making the fuel today. Anyhow, sure. And I know I'm kind of all over the place. I do apologize. So that is going to do a run. Great. I didn't realize that you were going to run. Well, the first thing we need to make sure goes away is that line right there, because I don't want it outputting any of the plutonium. I figure as long as it's stored inside a machine, it's not capable of polluting. I don't know. So as soon as that line, I guess we can break it to... Well, that whole line's going to go away. All right, you... I want to copy you and put you out of the way, and then we're going to delete you. Yes. That's gone, and that's gone. Yes, and then you can go away. No, that's fine. You don't need to do anything too terribly bad right now. We're just going to kind of load you up full of this stuff, and we won't worry about it. We'll let them move all those out of the way, and then I need to figure out what I want to do with this. Okay, that... I almost want to take that... Well, we're going to need it eventually, but I almost want to take that particular belt and put it somewhere else. All right, so you guys are going to get moved over... Sort of like so. What is this? That is another thing that needs to go away there. Done. And then... Yeah, it looks like I'm going to need to do a little bit of rejigging because I do want to kind of keep this stuff somewhat in line. I want the fission product, fission waste product, to be delivered as quickly as possible to storage so that we don't have a problem with it causing us pain. We'll do this to here, this to there, and then I'm going to have to move this stuff back here in order to make that happy. I'll probably just grab it and rotate it. Like that, probably, because we're going to have to bring in steel and salt to do the rest of the work. And I think I also want to not have them so close together. Can you move over here and you scoot by so we have room? Frogman from the future, I managed to record a considerable amount of footage, so we're going to chop this up into a couple episodes. Thanks for hanging out with me. I will see you all in the next one, and we will continue on with a decent explanation and build of the continued power problem. So, see y'all later. Thanks for watching. Bye. Yep, gonna have to move that. That's amazing.